Well, hey team, Tuesday tips. I have two short tips for you today, but before that, just have a couple of quick announcements. First, I had texted those of you I hadn't heard from regarding coming to the picnic. So if you could answer that text if you have not yet RSVP'd, I would sure appreciate that. Second, I am including in the email to you the link to sign up for a Freedom Prayer time. I would love for this time in soft launch to be a couple of things. If you start reaching out, some of you have, thanks, but you start reaching out to folks in your small groups and in your sphere of influence, in your families to tell them about Freedom Prayer and to get involved in the soft launch phase. We need to get some more prayer times going for at least like past the middle of August and into September at this point, so that we can keep sharpening our skills, and we just need people to do that. So please send out the link to people and encourage them to do some prayer times. And if you need a second prayer time, this is a great time to do it. If you're still working on things, I support that. I want us to continue always pulling off more layers, and that's just going to make us a really healthy team. So yes, anytime you want to have a prayer time, right now in this soft launch is a great time to do it. Okay, here's the two tips. Number one, prayer versus counseling. So I've heard from some people that there's a lot of conversation going on, way more conversation than should be going on in the prayer times, because people largely are used to coming in and talking to each other, talking to someone else about their problems rather than really talking to the Lord. So our job, remember, is to facilitate that encounter with the Lord and that time where He can actually speak in to situations. And we've got to help them do that. Counseling is not our lane. So if you find yourself giving lots of advice to somebody in a prayer time, or talking about how they deal with their family members or people at work, or coping mechanisms, that's unless the Lord is doing that work and bringing that up with them, that's really outside of what a Freedom Prayer session should be. Ours is about prayer. So sometimes you got to give a little grace. But my thought on this is, if you really set it up well at the beginning, then you'll have a place to pull them back in without having to interrupt the prayer time. So for instance, you could say at the beginning, hey, just want to make sure you understand that maybe you've never been in a prayer time before like this, or you've never sat with people who have prayed for you, but we are responsible to pray as a team with you. But what we don't do is more of a counseling and a talking session. I know that's sometimes what people are used to, and they want to get all the things out that are on their heart. But we're here to pray and ask the Lord what He thinks. And if you set that up, and you can even say, sometimes it just happens organically that we end up trying to talk a little bit more because we want to have the room understand us. But you can say sometimes that happens, and if it does, I'm going to gently pull us back into the space of prayer. And that gives you some language from the beginning, because we really want to tell them, we really want to hear more what Jesus says than what we each other have to tell. So, and I do think there are some times that you have to explain things, like if you're coming up to breaking an agreement, or, something that the person knows nothing about, then you might have to pull them out of prayer just briefly and explain what you're doing, and then get them right back. But you need to set the connection again. If you're going to pull them out, you got to make sure the connection is there as well. So remember the 80-20 rule. That's what you want to kind of shoot for. That's certainly at the front end and the end. We'll be talking with them and sharing some thoughts. But once you get into the prayer time, it's really most of the time you're in prayer. So keep the 80-20 in mind. And if you're hitting that 50-50 mark, boy, we're not praying like we should be. And certainly if there's not a whole lot of prayer going on, then you've got to reevaluate some of the language. So that's cool. And the other tip for today is about the debriefs. I'm grateful for you guys being willing to stay 15 minutes after and help each other walk through what did that prayer time look like. So first of all, debriefs are for all three chairs. It's not just for chair one. We need to evaluate how chair twos are entering the process. How are they passing notes? Were they helpful? Were they in a format that was helpful? Did they interrupt too much? Are there too many notes? Or did they not say enough? So, and chair 3 needs to sort of talk out what they did with the notes. But remember, all of the pieces of the Fruit Loop and the connection need to be accounted for in your notes. You do not have to write everything down, but it's really important to note the moments that were highlighted to the person, scriptures that came out that really spoke to them, all of the Fruit Loop steps, and heavy on the scoot, so they have something to go back to. And anything that God said that just made their heart open and smile, you want to capture those things. But as far as the debrief, here's my thought. I want to build a team, and I want us to keep building a family. And so we have to be willing to share some things with each other and believe and trust that we're for each other. So nobody's coming in with a critical heart and wanting to find fault. I haven't heard that from anybody. And so I just want us to trust that. So when people are giving you feedback, it's hard. You know, when you're laying something out there very personal, that they used to happen to me in writing classes when they'd put your writing up on the screen and everyone would just sort of have at it. It's a personal place, and so it's kind of vulnerable. I've had my golf swing looked at and videotaped, and people are looking. So I don't love it either. No one does. But this is the way that iron sharpens iron. So number one, you have to come in as chair 2 and 3, or if you're critiquing the other chairs, the other 2 have to be willing to say some things that are sometimes hard. You always want to find the positives, but you do need to find some places for improvement. No one's doing this perfectly. So let's get in there and really help them understand without worrying about what they're going to think. Now, that requires the other person to receive in a manner that's not defensive and doesn't get freaked out about it. And there can be a lot of like, okay, help me understand, and I was trying to do this. But if you find yourself being very defensive and kind of argumentative about what the people are saying, then it's going to be hard for people to share. So again, we want to be for each other, we want to build team, and we want to speak helpful hints in a way that someone can hear it. One other thing about this, you're going to see me popping into some of these prayer times a little bit more frequently as we begin to hone in some things before we have a launch, a little bit of a wider launch in October. I'm just getting my eyes on some different things in a more specific way. So keep doing the debriefs. Make sure you share those with me. You guys have been great about that. And just don't be weirded out if I'm coming into prayer times. I may sit chair 2 or 3. I may come in as a 4th chair observer. So I'm excited about that, just to be part of those moments with you as well. So love you guys. Hope you have an awesome day, and I'll see you soon.